Good evening and welcome to Charlotte City Council Business Meeting, October 28th. We will call this meeting to order and we'll start with introductions. I'll start to my right with the clerk.
Ariel Smith, Lead City Clerk.
Marjorie Molina, Councilmember, District 5.
Dante Anderson, Mayor Pro Tem, District 1.
Marcus Jones, City Manager.
Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Ed Driggs, District 7.
Darrell Bacardi, 6.
Luana Mayfield, Councilmember at Large.
Victoria Wallington, at large.
Lena James, Deputy City Attorney.
Excellent. So we will jump right into our consent agenda. And now as we get started with the consent agenda, please note that items 21, 35, 48, and 49 have been deferred by staff to the November 25th business meeting. And it's my understanding from the clerk's office that we have a speaker signed up to address the property transactions for 53 and 54. Zero Vision Pedestrian Safety Beacon, Hybrid Beacon on Park Road at Sunset, parcel 2 and 3. 21, 35, 48, and 49. And we will pull out 53 and 54 for a separate vote as we have a speaker this evening. But before we hear from the speakers, are there any other consent items that the council would like to have a separate vote or comment on? Ms. Mayfield?
Yes, I'm just looking at the ones that were pulled because those were some of my questions.
Okay.
I wanted to get pulled for a separate vote, number 40 and 41.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 22 through 52 with the exceptions of 21, 35, 48, 49, 40, 41, 53, and 54?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. And so we will start then with item number 40. We'll get there. Item number 40, is there a motion to approve a contract in the amount of $2,650,415.90 to the lowest responsive bidder, Blythe Construction, for the Josh Bingham Parkway Cell Lot and Bypass Project? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you. Marie, how many current projects are Blythe working on at the airport? I'm also trying to figure out, we have a very low CBI goal on this project, and CBI recently have expanded to 100 counties, so I'm trying to figure out trying to understand why the goal is so low. And the last question is around the bidders' information. When we put out the RFP, we would normally also have just like that second or third sheet that'll list everyone that bid it and what their amount was versus just having it noted in here that Blythe Construction was selected as the lowest responsive bidder.
Yes, thank you, Madam. And for this one, again, it's item number 40 on your consent. This one is, there's only one current contract with this Blythe vendor. The Blythe Development and Blythe Brothers Asphalt Company also have a contract for on-call services for snow removal with the airport. And these are listed as separate companies, however. And also, you mentioned, and I apologize, I need to follow up on why you couldn't see the bid tab as an attachment. It is in there, but we'll follow up on that to make sure it's visible. But Efficient Development LLC was the only other bidder, and their bid was $2,746,229.97. And their commitment, they did also meet the goal, but their commitment was lower at 3% and 9%, just meeting the goals. But to your point, there was only 2 bidders on this one, and this one, the one awarded, of course, beat in price, but also beat with CBI goals.
Thank you. So just for clarification on the follow-up, so this particular contract, is for Blythe Construction.
Yes, ma'am.
Blythe has several businesses under their umbrella. So am I to understand that because of the multiple businesses they have under the umbrella of Blythe Construction, each of those are identified as an individual? So it will be like a new contract, because you stated this is the only one of this kind, but we know we have Blythe Construction and multiple other partnerships within the airport and beyond, but because of the way that their structure is set up, it's considered as individual companies within the larger organization?
Yes, ma'am. I can't speak to the relationship within the larger, but it's definitely considered a separate business, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Any additional?
Approve?
Okay, I have a motion to approve, and we have a second, correct? Great. All in favor to approve agenda item number 40 as stated in our agenda, please raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. No? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Mayfield. I apologize, Ms. Mayfield. One opposed. Ms. Mayfield is opposed. We'll move on to agenda item number 41. The action is to approve a contract extension for 1 year for the contract with Johnson Controls, Inc., Building, Operating, and Security Systems for Building Operation Systems. Is there a motion to approve agenda item number 41?
So moved?
Second.
There's a motion to approve and a second. Any comments? Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you. Marie, on 41, the estimated value of this contract extension is $7 million.
Correct.
And 7, the new estimated value on this contract, including the extension, is over $40 million. Is this saying that we're committing over $1 million for this 1-year extension?
Yes, ma'am. And it's important to note that this airport continues to grow and more, and also our security needs continue to grow, quite frankly, and the technology available. But it's important to note that for this particular contract, it covers almost all the facilities of the airport. Not all of them, but almost all of them. And also, if you look at the value, it's $3.50 per square foot for this.
For a 1-year extension, but we're saying
Yes, ma'am.
the new estimated value for this contract, including this extension, just for this one contract, has been over $40 million?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Any additional comments? We have a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 41 as it appears in our agenda. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? Ms. Mayfield is opposed. Thank you. That concludes the majority of the consent agenda items. We will now ask Mr. Russell Weil. Mr. Russell Weil, you are here to speak to agenda items number 53 and 54.
Yes, ma'am.
If you could come to the podium for me, please.
Okay.
And when you arrive at the podium, you will have 3 minutes in total to address items 53 and 54.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for your time. My name is Russell Weil. I'm a former senior warden at Holy Comforter Charlotte, which is the property being affected by a new crosswalk on Park Road in between Kenilworth and Floral Avenues. there's a crosswalk that will come across at sunset and is taking portions of Holy Comforter's main campus and a home that we own adjacent to it. The engineering and planning for that project has been ongoing for, we understand, over a year and a half. We were not contacted until January 10th of this year. Once we were contacted, we were given contracts and estimates for the purchase. It's not a great deal of land. The purchase contract is estimated to be $3,000, which happened to be about exactly what the appraisals came back in. We will contest that value. But our biggest frustration was Holy Comforter's been on that location since 1957. We are Boy Scout Troop 1. We run room at the inn. Loaves and Fishes started out of there, and nobody contacted us. We have a real concern about the crosswalk because where it crosses mid-block on Park Road, you still will have to walk back to those other two streets where there are existing crosswalks less than 800 feet away, and leaving them the only viable way to get to Freedom Park, which is what engineering told us. The initial request was that one neighbor from across Park Road requested easier access to Freedom Park. They still have to walk back to those streets, or they're going to go through our driveway and open through a cut through that some of the neighbors know about with our neighbor Avondale Presbyterian Church, that we leave open so that they can access our parking lot and we can access theirs in funerals and big events. Kids in the neighborhood, dog walkers know about it. We have a bilingual preschool that operates 5 days a week, that the playground is right there at that driveway. So our concern was we didn't want more foot traffic coming up through our property by the preschool. And within 3 weeks, we got an email from the right-of-way agent that said, we hope you understand that this is exactly where the project is going to be built, and we'll give you an appraisal to assure and guarantee that you'll get a fair market value. Now, we did have some more conversations and got a site visit, but we've never had any real discussion. And so now you'll have condemnation in front of you, but we just feel like as a neighborhood church that's been in Dilworth since 1957, it would have been nice if planning had come out a little bit earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Weil.
Thank you.
So now that we have heard from our speaker, is there a motion to approve agenda item number 53? The property transaction is Zero Vision Pedestrian Safety Hybrid Beacon at Park Road and Sunset, parcel number 2. Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. I want to move to defer item 53 and 54 based on the information that was shared with us and making sure that we have transparency and communication with our neighbors.
Second.
Okay, so there is a motion to defer agenda item number 53 and 54 with a second from Ms. Watlington. Mr. Bakari.
Yeah, I'd be open to that because again, this is the first time I think we're hearing some of this. So is there some easy answer to this, or is this going to hurt if we delay by a couple weeks so we can get to the bottom of it?
Well, I would like Phil Rieger. He's in the room to talk a little bit about.
Now that we have a motion and a second, we can
I just
have
don't want
Mr.
to
Rieger.
make a decision without full information.
Good
Mr.
evening,
Rieger, please.
council members. Phil Rieger, General Services Director. We've been engaged with this property owner since November of 2023. We've had several engagements, including the meeting that the gentleman referred to. These are the last 2 parcels to make this safety project happen. The location is specific to the park and the pedestrian traffic and where we're seeing those crossings. We've done, I mean, there's the CDOT and General Services engineers have worked diligently to determine the location. This is on the critical path of the project, so a deferral would delay the start of construction. But that would be at the will of the council if they wanted to do that.
So, Mr. Rieger, while you're there, Will just said that, Weil just mentioned that he wasn't contacted until January 10th of this year. My understanding that there was some initial contact made back in November 16 of 2023?
That's correct. The first letter would have went out to engage the property owners in November around this project.
And at any point between November 16, 2023 and today, have there been acknowledgements and touch points with the property owners?
Yes, ma'am, several.
Okay. This is in my district, so this is why I'm sort of providing some additional color, but what my understanding is that an offer was made to the church based on the appraised value, and the property owner requested an on-site meeting and traffic study, and the on-site meeting was held on May 29th of this year with the project team and the church representation. Is that correct? Okay. And then in June 25th, 2024, the vestry, which is the church representatives, submitted a letter voicing some concerns about the location, and a response was provided on July 15th of this year, including the explanation as to why the alternative locations were not feasible. Does that sound accurate, Mr. Rieger?
Yes, ma'am.
I see Mr. Weil shaking his head as well. So then in August, the condemnation deadline was extended, and it was communicated to the church in hopes of a resolution. So we had a couple of touch points beginning back in November of 2023, a few touch points this year, and then the condemnation deadline was extended so that we could come to a resolution with the church. And then the acquisition manager, the real estate acquisition manager, attempted to make several calls during October prior to the council meeting as late as October 25th of this year. So those were multiple touch points over the balance of 2024, beginning back in November 23.
That is correct.
Did I leave anything out? No? Okay. Mr. Weil.
The letter was.
Wait, hang on. I'll invite you back up to the podium. No, you can, that's the only way you can speak is if you come to the podium. So I have a question for you. So, Mr. Weil, my question for you is, as I just ran through the touch points and the action items, I saw you were shaking your head. Is that in alignment with your understanding, or do you have a different understanding?
It's close. The letter was never delivered to the church in November. The right-of-way agent said they couldn't find a place to drop off mail, so our first substantial contact was January 10th of this year by email.
Okay.
So that's the only change.
Okay, and so your request about these two particular properties are what actually? You're not in alignment with the actual appraisal value?
Well, we question the necessity of the crosswalk to begin with, and the fact that it comes in mid-block to our back driveway, and even though it comes in mid-block, they have to walk down to the street, Salem and/or Lilac, to get the equal distance that they could walk on the other side of the street to get to the existing crosswalk. So we're questioning the necessity of it.
Okay, so your question is really about whether or not this really needs to occur at all.
That's our primary question.
It's not about the property value.
Well, the values we're going to contest also. We've had some different valuations that it affects the home that we have next door, where the driveway is and what potential future use.
Okay.
So, but we have the ability to contest that in the courts, and we'll do that. But our primary reason to speak with council tonight was on February 26th, we got an email from the right-of-way agent that said, this is where this project will be built, and we'll get some appraisals to guarantee you fair market value. So we were never in an open discussion with the city on the project.
Okay, so, I am absolutely, absolutely support a deferment if we think that we could get to a point of resolution. It sounds as if there is not a point of resolution for you because you are questioning the value of this safety hybrid beacon to begin with. That is really the point of contention.
That's correct.
Okay, so would a deferment for a month, would that help you get to the alignment of the need for the beacon? Or do you believe that you and your representatives from the church are steadfast in this position?
Yeah, I would say that Holy Comforter would prefer that crosswalk not be built.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Rieger, just one additional question for you. You mentioned a deferment. It sounds like a deferment will not help the community get to a better solution. However, if a deferment was taken this evening, you mentioned that there would be some delays in the project. Can you add some dimension to the delay in the project?
Absolutely. Couple points. A deferment, we're ready to move this project. Once we finish our real estate acquisition process, then we would move to bid documents and bidding the project. So any deferral would delay the bid process, which then delays the construction process at this point. A change in location will require a complete redesign. So that would add could be 6 to 9 months of design work that would happen. And so our transportation professionals feel really comfortable with this design. One other point about the request for this crosswalk, it came from our ADA community. And so we have somebody with a disability that is requesting to have some help. It's very common that we would put in a mid-block crosswalk with a pedestrian hybrid beacon when we have really long distances between signalized intersections to help our community. So this is one of those cases.
I have Ms. Watlington and then Ms. Vicky.
Thank you. As a matter of process, I heard you mention earlier that this decision is on the critical path. Can you help me understand if it has already come before council, before it was on the critical path?
It has not. Because of the church's objection, we delayed or deferred and delayed the condemnation in August in order to try to continue to negotiate. We weren't able to come to a settlement.
Okay, so just moving forward, as a matter of practice, if we can get these decisions before council before it's something on the critical path, because it doesn't make it easy for us to have a decision when we're being told that any delay then impacts the project. So just from a planning standpoint, let's make sure that these council decisions are not on the critical path.
Thank you, Ms. Watlington, Ms. Mayfield, and then Mr. Driggs.
Thank you. So, Mr. Rieger, just for clarification, there was a deferral. I believe that the impression that we had and that you all had as staff was that during that time, there was supposed to be some communication with the landowners. You're stating that that did not happen?
No, we attempted to have communications. What we weren't able to do is come to a settlement on this piece of property.
So if we backtrack to the beginning of this conversation, and this is just a question for clarification, does staff generally start a process of a design that impacts a landowner without them being a part of the conversation?
We generally have public engagement on the very beginning of the projects. Whether or not all property owners engage is up to them. It's their discretion to come to the meetings and whatnot. By the time it becomes a real estate acquisition issue, those meetings have been completed. Design has started. Design's actually almost complete by then, so we know exactly what we need to buy so that we don't buy too much property or too little. So public engagement would have happened well in advance of maybe even, I don't have the dates for that in front of me, but it could have been even a year before we ever would have even engaged from a real
So it
estate
would have been
perspective.
prior to 2023.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Driggs?
So this is a safety project, right? I mean, it's about safety. Whether it was November or January, it's been quite a long time. Did you have requests for meetings that you ignored or denied?
I'm not aware of any requests for meetings that were either approved or denied. No, no, sir.
I mean, I feel like this is unfortunately kind of a public necessity from what I've learned. And I'm inclined to support the efforts of the staff to create a safer infrastructure for us. So I would like to make a substitute motion to approve it.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a substitute motion to approve 53 and 54, with a motion by Mr. Driggs and a second by Mr. Graham. Any additional comments? Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Just for clarification, Mr. Rieger, so it's kind of a catch-22, right? It's, understanding that you all have very likely put in a lot of effort into this, right? And now, for what would appear to be the first time we have a community member coming before us, I'm wondering, I'm kind of wondering how we meet in the middle, right? Like how we, and honestly, I'm struggling with the idea of another month giving us more time when we've had this long, and basically there's a definitive, staff needs to move forward, and there's been work done, and now we have a community member who is here to say that, there's not a resolution that would, make them happy, except for this not happening. So I'd like to know what your professional opinion is.
So in this particular case, where location is a challenge, and we received that feedback, and we consulted with our transportation professionals to look at alternatives. Alternatives were looked at. The resolution was, or the decision was, we need to stay with this location, given other intersections, given the need as it relates to what the pedestrian behaviors were. And so this is sort of a challenge. Understand that condemnation isn't a finality, it's really the beginning. And what that means is that staff continues to negotiate with the property owners throughout the entire condemnation process, hoping that we would come to a resolution without the need for court. And so in this case, if there's no movement as it relates to location, then we would be talking about price. And ultimately, the courts would determine the price if we couldn't settle between the two parties. But we would, if there is questions about price, we've done an appraisal. Of course, the city paid for that. And so we always invite property owners, if they question those appraisals, to feel free to bring us additional information that might inform the value of a potential property. And so I don't believe we've received that yet, but we're certainly open to continue those conversations about price.
So a yes tonight from this council to move forward would initially kind of give you that authorization to continue on this path that you're mentioning?
Gives us the opportunity to continue down the path of construction. It won't slow the project down, but it does not stop our negotiating with the property owner.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Before we have a vote, I just would, in closing, I would say that I hear Mr. Wiles' positioning on this, but this was a safety request from a member of the community. This is effectively my neighborhood, so I live very close to this area. It's very difficult to cross these roads, in particular if you are differently able and have to move a bit slower. And so given that this was a request from a member of our community with ADA challenges, I would like for us to be able to move forward without delay to the project, but also have the opportunity to continue negotiation with Mr. Weil and the church for this particular location. The location is the location for a specific reason as it relates to safety. The other piece I would say is this parcel, there are two parcels, but really a major portion of a small parcel of this is really for underground construction on that parcel. So the above ground will still be available for the public, et cetera. It's really to get down in there and put infrastructure in the ground for the hybrid beacon to move. So now that we've had discussion, I don't see any hands for additional discussion. There's a motion to approve 53 and 54 as stated in our agenda, motion and a second. All in favor to approve 53 and 54, raise hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. And Mr. Weil, thank you for coming out, and
Thank you all for your time.
thank you. Okay. That concludes completely the consent agenda. And now I will pass it over to the city manager for the overview of our action review.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So we have two items on the action review tonight, American Rescue Plan update, as I think were together last time at a business meeting. The concept here is to talk about the progress where we are with the ARPA funds, with the whole goal of making sure that December 31st, 2024 at midnight, we don't turn any dollars back into the federal government. So Sean Heath is going to give you an update on where we are there. And then we have a faith and housing update, and I think that's a combination from Councilmember Mayfield and Warren from Housing and Neighborhood Services. I do believe, Mayor Pro Tem, that there are 2 closed session items, and tonight we have the public forum, so typically the desire is to get out of here.
That is correct.
By 6:30, so just putting that out there, whether or not you want to handle the closed session items in 267 or later, but we do have 2 closed session items tonight.
Yes, that is correct. Our business meeting starts at 6:30, and we do have a closed session topic, 2 topics. So if we can move through these 2 presentations and updates, and that'll give us an opportunity to handle the closed session. And with that, I will hand it over to Mr. Heath.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Sean Heath, City Manager's Office.
Well, my faith in houses already been bought once.
So why don't we just go with the presentation and see how
Yes.
it turns out, okay?
Yay, Sean.
Okay, the good news is this presentation is fairly light on slides. This will look familiar to you, possibly, from my February 2024 update on ARPA. Quickly going from top to bottom, you'll recall in 2021, 2022, the City of Charlotte received $141.6 million of funding under the ARPA State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund program. Moving down to the boxes below, you can see the allocation of that funding that was agreed upon by council early on, with $31 million devoted to city operations and employees. To the right, in the dark gray rectangles, a collection of community-facing priority areas that in aggregate equate to $110 million, which is approximately 80% of the overall 141.6 that's been programmed and put to work in the community. Not all of that has been spent yet, which we'll talk a little bit in subsequent slides. And then, as Manager Jones referred to before, ARPA does have an obligation deadline of December 31st, 2024. We'll talk a little bit about this concept of revenue replacement this evening, because with the revenue replacement methodology, it does give us the opportunity
And our intention is to use that in a few instances where it would be helpful to have a longer runway than December 31st of this calendar year. In 2025, we'll do an ARPA impact summary report of some sort, but here we just wanted to cherry pick a few areas of focus, things that have been done with the ARPA funds and council direction. You can see a number of employee-centered investments at the top here, including $14 million for employee retention, incentives, and premium pay. There was a particular emphasis there, obviously, on hourly employees and public safety pay plan personnel. This was really back in what feels like a long time ago, but the 2021-2022 timeframe. $8 million of information technology investments, which were really critical in enabling some network infrastructure upgrades to allow us to have a strong telework environment. And then $6 million here referenced for some significant COVID-related spikes in healthcare costs. As I mentioned on the previous slide, most of the programming for ARPA has been focused on the community itself. And you can see a range of things here that are aligned well with your strategic priorities and strategic initiatives. I'll just cherry pick the first two here. $20 million focused on the creation or preservation of affordable housing units. This included a very large-scale NOAA project on Central Avenue, as well as a handful of cost-challenged HTF projects that came to us during the pandemic. $17 million supporting over 100 nonprofit organizations. That $17 million was put to the community in a number of different ways. In some instances, we had formal programs that were established where we had a notice of funding opportunity. Nonprofit organizations submitted grant requests. We went through an analysis and a scoring process, and those were competitively awarded. We had one or two examples where nonprofit opportunities were vetted at the committee level. And then we probably had two or three examples where there were targeted investments, opportunities like the YMCA and Three Sisters Market, where council had a particular interest in supporting something happening in the community. So those were handled in more of an informal way without a defined process around it. And you can see a few other references here to things that have also been done with the ARPA funding. So the real purpose for tonight is just to give a quick status update on the $141.6 million. And while the unobligated column on the far right is the most important column, because that's where, to Mr. Manager's comment, we want to ensure we avoid a scenario where on December 31st, when the clock expires, there's any funding that would have to be returned to the federal government. Let me quickly move from left to right just to make sure that I'm explaining what's on the slide here. So we'll use the city operations row as an example here, and $31 million is the same amount from previous slide. That was the total amount for city operations. At any point in time, ARPA funding has to fall into one of three categories. Either it's spent, obligated, or unobligated. Spent means exactly what it sounds like. The dollars are out the door, the money's out of the bank, and program dollars have been put to work. Obligated, the money's still in the bank, but there's a contractual obligation in place. And then unobligated would simply would not equate to unprogrammed. One important point here, if you look at the unobligated column here, with one exception that I'll talk about on the next slide, all of the community-facing investments have gone through council discussion and request for council action. So it's not as if the $28.3 million is looking for a home to be programmed. All of it's been programmed, all of it's, with one exception, has been authorized by council for very explicit purposes. It just so happens those are projects where we've not yet reached the contract yet. And on the next slide, I'll tell you what our game plan is to ensure that the $28.3 million is obligated, in fact, by the end of the calendar year. You can see big picture at the bottom. If you add up for all of the categories spent and obligated, the $91.9 million spent and $21.4 million obligated, that's 80% of the overall funds that are already in a position where there's no question how it'll be handled by the end of the year. Moving along, just two more slides. So the idea of having the game plan for the $28.3 million that's currently in an unobligated status is shown here. There are really three areas of focus. One would be there are 10 projects where, through conversation with various departments that are responsible for administering the projects, I'm comfortable that with absolute certainty we have a credible path to get the projects obligated before the end of the calendar year. It's a range of projects. One's as small as $30,000. One is as large as $1.5 million. But we're confident that there's a path forward to get those funds obligated before the end of the calendar year. And in all instances, what we're doing with that funding is exactly what council has approved. The next category here in the middle, revenue replacement treatment. These are 6 specific project areas where it's helpful for us to have a bit of a longer runway. And each one of these has its own story. Revenue replacement is a method that's allowed by the ARPA rules. I'll be happy in the Q&A to talk a little bit about the mechanics, but for me, there are 2 or 3 key things that you achieve with revenue replacement. First, you avoid a scenario where you're having to return money to the federal government. Second, in all instances, we are still doing exactly what council has authorized for from a project perspective. So just using anti-displacement as an example. In fiscal year 24, there was a request for council action for approximately $6 million in anti-displacement programs recommended by the Nest Commission. With a revenue replacement approach, we would spend that $6 million in exactly the way that council has authorized us to do so. So we avoid the December 31st deadline. We spend the money exactly as council has authorized, and there's nothing that harms the general fund in doing that approach. So I'll quickly just mention kind of each one of these on here since it's the largest category by far. So the anti-displacement programs, as I mentioned, approved by council in FY24, various programs like Acquire, Rehab, and Resell, and House Charlotte Plus fall under that anti-displacement umbrella. Those programs have been launched, and they're moving down the pathway, but we just need a little more runway beyond December 31st for the obligation. Number 2, multifamily affordable housing development. This was one of the cost-challenged HTF projects. This is a District 1 affordable project with over 100 units. We believe the financing for that project will close by the end of the calendar year, but we need to de-risk those funds and avoid any scenario where there's a surprise in late December. So that's why we'd like to do revenue replacement there. The workforce development funding earmark, this is the one and only example that I had referenced before where there isn't specific programming that's been authorized by council yet. I mentioned that placeholder in February of this year during my presentation, and Manager Jones also made reference to it during the May 20th budget adjustment session. So for that particular one, this would give Danielle an opportunity as she's activating on her workforce development strategies to have $3 million in capacity, which would come to council for conversation and ultimately authorization. On digital inclusion, this is one piece of the overall $10 million that was set aside for digital inclusion. And this is an opportunity for the INT team to work with some community partners who will deploy that money in support of digital literacy and internet access for specific population groups. Reentry is one that in a few moments, Councilmember Mayfield, I know you're aware that there's $2.5 million in total. It comes from 2 different sources. So the $1.5 million here is just one piece of that. And then there are a couple of relatively small projects that are being administered by Assistant City Manager Dodson's team that shows up there. Finally, in category 3, as I mentioned before, there are well over 50 projects and programs, depending on how you slice and dice it, that were authorized by council. There's really a very short list of things where the funding that was authorized by council can be redeployed to other uses. Higher Charlotte related projects had a few, which in total add up to $3.85 million. Keep in mind, when you look at all of the ARPA 141.6, depending on how you slice it and dice it, roughly 15 million-ish was set aside for workforce development. So I wouldn't want to leave you under the impression that in some way we're backing away from workforce development. There's certainly ample resources that have been devoted to that area. And then the one housing-related pilot program for $1.5 million. So going through that would essentially be the strategy to ensure that the $28.3 million is obligated by the end of the year. With that in mind, you can see the $5.35 million that would be available for redeployment, which leads us to the final slide here. As of today, with the $5.35 available for redeployment, as well as the current estimate for ARPA interest of $4.55 million, that would leave obviously roughly $10 million of available capacity. So just for illustrative purposes, we've put a few examples here on the slide. We're not expecting any decisions to be made tonight by any means, but wanted you to be aware of what that number looks like. The manager has made multiple references to ARPA interest over the last 6 months. And then now you've got a better line of sight into some of the funding that could be redeployed. Real quickly here, in terms of potential uses of the funds, support city operations. You know, we have a history going back to the CARES Act, even before ARPA. It's been quite useful in certain instances to have some funding, 20%, 30%-ish of our funding available for various internal purposes. Here we've just given 2 examples, reimbursing medical expenses in the employee benefits plan. We've done a bit of that already with ARPA. Strategy and Budget and the Human Resources Department are doing some calculations on what's the eligibility to do a little bit more of that, if council so desired to set aside for city operations. And then another example we have is getting ahead of some supply chain things for heavy-duty vehicles would just be examples. These aren't must-haves, but they're just opportunities to put it to work on some internally focused areas. And then last, certainly nonprofit support is something that's come up at different times in different ways. There would be various ways to do this. 2 have been identified here. One would be to set aside some funding for your financial partners program in FY26. If you look at how the financial partners program funding has evolved over the last couple years, because of ARPA and ARPA interest, for general fund related financial partners, for example, in 2023, the amount of funding was roughly 1.9 million, whereas for FY25, it is roughly 3.8 million. And that's primarily because of ARPA, ARPA interest, and PAYGO. So one approach here would be to take some of the $10 million and park it in order to support FY26 financial partners. So there's not a cliff effect to worry about in that program. And the second would be not bringing these tonight as specific staff recommendations because we haven't gone through any sort of a process, but we're aware through different things that have been discussed in council meetings and committee meetings and other things that are bubbling in the communities that there are some compelling needs out there. I've mentioned a few. It's not intended to be an exhaustive list, but Big Brothers Big Sisters, Care Ring, Charlotte Water Foundation, and Do Greater Charlotte. If I may, Mr. Manager, is there any additional commentary you'd like to add around this?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
well, thank you. Just a few things. One, job well done, Sean, and that goes to our CFO and the budget office, because making sure that we handle these funds the right way is extremely important. I think I recall back with CARES funding when it came in, we had like $71 million just pop into our account with no instructions about what to do. But I say all that to say job well done, team. And council, you've been extremely thoughtful with your decision making. I believe all in it was $300 million between CARES and ARPA, and 2/3 of those dollars went back into the community. So what Sean said, and I won't do any doom and gloom, I promise you that. We're having budget kickoff tomorrow. There's a lot of good things that are happening. I don't want you guys to feel rushed to make any decisions tonight. What we try to do is at least identify some of the different organizations that may not have, that may have waited because this day would come, whether it's ARPA interest or whether it is dollars being redeployed. But my point is that there's no real clock. The clock is more related to not having these dollars spent or obligated by December 31st. And by you allowing us to move forward with this action, advise us the time that we need with revenue replacement, and then there's no clock whatsoever on these funds. Okay?
Thank you, City Manager. I have a question for Mr. Driggs and then Mr. Graham.
Does the deployment of these funds, the 18 million, does that free up anything that was in our operating budget before?
It will with this revenue replacement, but it's not as if all of a sudden you're going to have additional dollars to do something new. You'll have additional dollars to essentially do what you already planned to do with this 18.2 million, sir.
So we intended to use this money that way all along?
Correct.
Correct.
The only nuance, the only benefit of the revenue replacement is it allows us to spend the money on the projects that council has approved at a date later than December 31st of this year.
Right, so what is the actual money in the account, the ARPA account being used for? So in other words, we're saying that, will that money be used for this, or are we going to then create a situation where we can fund these projects from operating without having to deal with the deadline? I'm just trying to understand the dynamics.
Let's just use the first line as an example, the 6 million associated with anti-displacement. So if we move forward with revenue replacement, that 6 million would absorb costs that would otherwise be borne by the general fund. So we could just say first responder salaries, for example. And so $6 million of costs otherwise borne by the general fund would be covered by ARPA. And then we would have a transfer of budget authority of that same $6 million into a separate account, which would then be held for us to spend on this particular programming.
Right, okay, so we will actually use the cash for something else, revenue replacement, and then create capacity in our operating fund for these things, and then not have to deal with the deadline. Okay, just want to be clear. On the 10 million, I mean, we've got $10 million and we're looking around for ways to spend it. Do we have an option to just put the 10 million in pay-go and not incur as much debt?
Sure, that 10 million is free and clear to do whatever the council would like to do. But the only thing I would say, and you know this, let's not use one-time money for ongoing expenses. So the 10 million, again, you can have discussions.
Pay-go wouldn't be.
Exactly, right.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Put it in pay-go, use it for capital projects, don't borrow as much money to pay for the capital projects, and maybe we won't be so far out of line with our debt capacity with our capital plan. We could do that.
You could. I would ask that we talk to our CFO about how much that really moves the needle, but absolutely you could do that.
Right, I don't like the appearance that we had $10 million and now we're kind of looking around for ways to spend it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for the presentation. Ways to spend it, right? Obviously, there's ways to spend it, and there's been at least one or two nonprofits that's been talked about for the last several months in reference to supporting that fits within the council's priorities. One being Caring, that is on one of our corridors of opportunities, who have been just built renovating a facility on that corridor on Graham Street that I think really deserve the type of consideration from this council to support their president and CEOs with us tonight. They've been around this conversation for 4 months, maybe even a year now, for sure. And I would love for staff to kind of dig and talk with them specifically about their needs and how we can be supportive if the council believes that we should move in that direction. And then secondly, again, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. This has been around for a while, for sure, dating back to January of this year, related to solving issues related to juvenile justice and providing an environment for helping us reduce crime in Uptown and specifically throughout the city of Charlotte through a very traditional and accomplished organization that has done the kind of the work on the ground. So I would hope that staff would really give them the type of due diligence and consideration and bring the council back something that we can react to. And then certainly the budget process for nonprofit is a different track. And I hope that we can really kind of drill down and be narrowly tailored to focus on those two. Like I said, they are consistent with our priorities and that they've been really knocking on the doors consistently for the last year and a half. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you. Sean, thank you for this great presentation. I appreciate the fact that we do have funds. I do not think that we're looking for a way to spend it, but I do want us to consider that out of these one-time funds, that we look at bigger projects. So when we look at support of caring, that ask is going to be a considerable ask. When we look at do greater, they're also building additional space. That is going to be a larger ask. For me, with these funds, because we get to collect the interest, we get to keep the interest, that we don't have to allocate. So we have the opportunity to still do some of what Councilmember Driggs said, but I think these dollars, we have the opportunity to hit some of those big asks. My presentation's coming up next, but since my colleague opened the door, yes, I'm gonna already tell y'all, I'm gonna ask for another $1 million for my faith and housing, and I'll give y'all a good reason why. But that $9 million that's left over, I think we have the opportunity for some of those asks that are under $1 million to 400,000, 300, 200, where we can really have an impact for those one time. Y'all know how I feel about people coming back multiple times, as I'm coming back multiple times. So for full, I'm gonna go ahead and own that hypocrisy. I think we have that opportunity. I don't feel that it is seeking a way to spend it, but with the interest, we still have other opportunities. But knowing that we have 10 million out of our ARPA, ultimately, I want to thank not only council, but manager. I don't do it often, but I will publicly recognize the fact that you and the team did a wonderful job of distributing this large sum of money that came into our community in ways that has had the beginning and will have future positive impacts and set us up to do some things that we have been wanting to do that we didn't necessarily know how to fund previously. So I do want to publicly acknowledge you, Sean, and the entire team, especially our numbers people, on putting us in a very strong financial position. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Seeing no further comment, Mr. Manager, should we move on to the next presentation and talk about what next steps are for the ARPA funds?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like, not it seems, what we'll do next is we will come before you with an RCA that would make sure that we're able to have this revenue replacement so we don't have an issue come December 31st. Okay?
Excellent. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Heath, for the presentation. Now we'll move on to the Faith and Housing Initiative update. Mr. Wooten is joining us.
So for time's sake, you want me to jump in while you was walking up? Why are they pulling that up? So, Madam
Ms. Mayfield.
Vice Chair, Madam Pro Tem, my apologies. So as they're pulling that up, I'm going, for the sake of time, across the country, faith-based organizations are uniquely positioned to leverage their resources, land, buildings, capital, and people to enhance the availability of affordable housing and bolster community well-being. As we all know, Mayor Vilaus in January did launch an initiative. She asked for me to lead it. We came together, we being myself, Rebecca Hefner, Miles Vaughn, and Warren Wooten. We identified this and named it Faith in Housing for the double entendre of that, to address the need for affordable housing and community services in Charlotte. This initiative builds on the hard work of the several visionary faith leaders and organizations who have already completed housing of diverse price points in communities across Charlotte, including St. Paul Baptist, Little Rock AME Zion, Covenant Presbyterian, Mayfield Memorial Baptist, and the Park Church. Since the launch of the initiative, the city has facilitated 10 small group, I believe now is 12. We are now at 12 small group discussions, bringing together over 80 faith leaders and focus on gathering input and guidance from the faith community to ensure the city provides the necessary support for their housing initiatives. Through the fiscal year 2025 budget, Thankfully, you all supported the $2.5 million in support of this initiative, $1.5 million from the ARPA and the reallocation, and $1 million ARPA interest. I'm asking for another $1 million. An additional $1 million has been requested through the Federal Community Project funding process, that is through Congresswoman Alma Adams' office. These funds will be used to provide technical assistance and project development support directly to our faith-based organizations in Charlotte. And with that, I turn it over to the amazing Mr. Wooten.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. You took care of lots of my slides, so I'll make this a short presentation. Warren Wooten, Housing and Neighborhood Services. Thank you, Council, for having us up here. And I really appreciate Ms. Mayfield's enthusiastic leadership around this initiative. We've really been charged to focus on kind of two broad areas. One, equipping faith-based organizations to do this work, and then empowering them through some of the funding that you are providing to move projects further, faster. One of the things that we have been instructed to do and have done so is not get in front of faith-based communities, but stand beside them and get behind them to move forward the great work that they are already doing. And they've been doing it in this community for quite some time. With your support, over 700 new affordable housing units have been created by faith communities. And through this initiative, we're working to scale this up and develop new innovative models for faith communities to partner with local government, philanthropic organizations, and the business community to continue to move this work forward and create larger impacts throughout our community. We started working on this in January with many of those small informal meetings that Ms. Mayfield led in our faith community, but it really kicked off in May of 2024. We had a really fantastic summit and a really overwhelming response from the faith community. 300 plus attendees, over 95 faith communities were present. We had a plenary session, we had breakout sessions. We had extremely engaging small group discussions, and then we ended by having a follow-up survey that we received over 140 responses. And some of the things that the faith community were telling us in that survey was just the need for continued collaboration, their need to have technical assistance in areas of financing and zoning, a common database or a directory to help them engage with each other, and a way to get more information about upcoming events. So those are the items that you'll see that we have been working forward since that meeting. So what's happened so far? We've had some education and training opportunities. We did a session called Discovering Charlotte's Housing Trust Fund, and then we finished up last month Land Development 101, which was really focused on land and land use. And then we are currently working on Land Development 102, which is how to work with a developer. So that session was last week, and we'll do a virtual version of that tomorrow. And for anyone that missed any of that, all you have to do is Google Faith and Housing Charlotte. The city's Faith and Housing webpage goes to the top of that list, and all of this information is being recorded and collected for use going forward. And I just need to stop for a second and recognize just the amazing work that we're already building on doing this. We featured some videos that are on that website of some special projects that the faith community has been involved in. We've been really engaged with members of our faith community, and just it's important just to stop and recognize the amazing work that some of these community members are already doing. Reverend Cleghorn leading one of the projects at his church, and also wrote this amazing op-ed. Reverend Peter Weary, Reverend Dwayne Walker at Little Rock, Amy Zion, they're the ones that sponsored the Varick on 4th project, happens to be named after the first bishop of that church. So again, building on the work that members of our faith community are already moving forward. I already mentioned once, I'll mention it again. All of the information about these resources we're putting in a very easy to access location. Again, just Google Faith and Housing or go to the city's website and follow the Faith and Housing link. It has all of the information about our upcoming events, how to register to receive more information, how to register to be part of the directory so that other members in the community can look you up and contact you about opportunities. A summary of the Faith and Housing event is there, and how to join the faith-based organization mailing list to receive information about upcoming opportunities. Speaking of upcoming opportunities, we have been very busy this last year, and we have more to come. So again, I want to point out that we have a virtual session of Land Development 102. That's tomorrow. Anyone can register and attend that. And then we have additional opportunities coming up. One of the things that we've been hearing back from the faith community is, how do I even know if I am ready to move forward? What should I be thinking about? We're developing a readiness checklist so that churches can ask themselves questions about where they're at and start working through this question to help them discern where they are can move forward. A flash advising event is going to be planned for early next year. This is going to be a volunteer effort from a lot of our practitioners. Our developers will be there, architects, engineers. Any church that has a question about their project or their property can just show up and get some free advice, to have someone look over their plans. And then in early 2025, there will be 2 opportunities for churches to apply to receive additional assistance. One is a cohort-based design where they can apply to be part of a cohort where they would work with 6 to 8 other faith-based organizations to work together with experts in this field to move their projects forward. Those are going to be 6 to 12-month engagements, where at the end of it, we expect to have several new projects come out ready for development. And then some faith communities are saying that they don't think that they'll necessarily be ready for that much of an engagement that early. Well, that's okay. There will be another funding opportunity for them. There will be a portal where they can apply for a grant with the city using some of this money that you have set aside. And they'll be able to ask for specific types of technical assistance. A third-party advisor to look at their project and provide them expert advice. Find that RFP on our website and submit their credentials to be considered to help these faith-based communities with their work. And that is the end of my very brief comments.
Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you very much. So the city will continue to share the information. If you did not capture it, it's at charlottenc.gov/faith and housing. We do have a Faith and Housing email list, as well as on social media. We are really encouraging everyone who's interested to sign up. Once you go online and sign up, then you receive not only the information of the upcoming meetings, but you have access to the previous meetings so that you can review it and share it with your congregations or with your groups. Again, y'all heard some of the reasons why I'm asking for another $1 million. I'm just going to throw that back out there again. So when we think about the ongoing engagement opportunities, the feedback surveys, those are helping us to share future support. Remember also, I believe it just closed last week, the survey we had around the Housing Trust Fund and the recommendations. We're also looking at that. And we're really being intentional, ensuring that the faith communities receive the guidance needed to advance the housing and community service solutions. We are not trying to tell them how to do this. We have experts that have done it. What we ultimately are doing is we're creating a toolkit to make it a lot easier for you to connect. And we've already have at least, and Warren, don't let me tell a lie, we have at least 10 church groups that have already connected since we had the summit, and that are already working together and bouncing ideas and looking at opportunities and sharing some of the process with each other. We also had an email just this week that I shared regarding, here's our language for a CDC. Are we on the right track? So that's where those experts come into play. And of course, if you have experts, we're not gonna necessarily pay you market rate, we negotiating, but we still need to pay you for your time and for your expertise. So that is what the funding is going for. But just so that you all know, I am still out in the community, working with our partners to look at other options to help bring funds, and then that will be a conversation with our budget committee as well as our director of who will house those private funds that we can match up, very similar to years ago when we first passed increased the bond to 50 million. The community came together, private sector, they matched that 50. There are conversations happening in the community for the same 100 million, and them coming to the table and match, and what could a piece of that do to help us move this conversation forward. And it is 6:17.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you, colleague, for the amazing work that you're leading. I have a question. There's a church in District 4 that approached me about this a while ago. Before the initiative, I've connected you. But he's hesitant to apply because of a previous rezoning where there was neighborhood opposition. And that petition was ultimately withdrawn. So is there anyone from city staff working on this project that can guide the potential developers or potential churches on the history of the site and what might be recommended or approved, or I know they can't say what's approved, but that type of history and giving them guidance, you know, that sit-down meeting that you have with the other developers, are they receiving that type of technical guidance?
Thank you for the question. So let me answer two different ways. They are more than welcome to reach out to me. Never hurts to have a conversation. I believe that I'm aware of the church that is in question and would be happy to speak with them again. But that is a great opportunity for that standalone technical assistance grant where they could hire a third-party professional who works on putting these projects together to look at where they're at, look at the zoning, and help to brainstorm with that congregation what the future of that site might be. So I'm happy to talk to them now, but I think that I would really encourage them to apply to this next opportunity coming up so they can get some really direct assistance from professionals that this is what they do for a living, with no obligation to develop the site. So that's one of the things I think is really important, is that the assistance that we're providing does not require that church move forward. There's no requirement that they move forward. This is just to help them get the information that they need about what's possible on their properties, and discern for themselves how they want to move forward. Let me also correct myself. I fall into saying churches very often. There are many faith communities that have reached out to us and who are participating in that. So I just wanted to lift that up. There's members of the Baha'i community, the Hindu community, the Muslim community, all who are interested in participating in that. And we welcome any faith community to come and participate with us in these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Molina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And just really quick while we're there, because I do recall something similar. I know you guys do in District 5 last year, where we had a community member and there was some tension.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of fear from the community. I remember, you know, a lot of you guys went with me to the community meeting where we were listening to the community members. And have you had that as a result? Like, have you, Ms. Mayfield, have you seen that reaction from community members?
That has been honestly the most amazing part so far, is that I think because of the approach and how we did this, with being very intentional with the outreach to the diversity, as was mentioned, we had 95 different denominations that were represented. That's never happened in the city. But because we were very intentional on the front end to say, hey, we want you to tell us what this looks like for you. If anything, every time we're out together or even individually, I have just residents coming up saying, hey, my church has land, my church has a building, how do we get engaged in this? How do we get involved in this? I've had religious leaders come up, hey, I'm a pastor of this church, we have this. I heard about it, we just attended a meeting, how can we get engaged? So it has been the opposite, yet at the same time, we have created the conversations and the relationships that help the church. Here's how you create a survey, not only for your congregants, but a survey for the community to get buy-in. What will the community support? And this is how we build those relationships so that they don't feel like, well, we're just doing this to you versus we are doing this together for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that because, again, as we move forward, I mean, I know that, this is a new project and, congratulations to you guys. I think this is amazing work. I think all of us, I mean, I definitely can speak for myself in saying I'm really happy to see, us take this initiative and take this type of opportunity to the next level. I think it is untapped. And again, my first exposure was when we entertained it on the council last year and met, objection, right? And so I'm so encouraged to hear that we have so many examples of how it's going well. So I just wanted to lift that up and see if you guys had any similar obstacles, but I'm glad you got solutions. It's encouraging. Thank you both.
Thank you, Ms. Molina, and thank you, Ms. Mayfield, for your leadership, and Mr. Wooten. This is a wonderful initiative. I too have sent people your way who have come to me in my district around faith-based organizations for housing, and just wanted to highlight, as you had mentioned, Little Rock AME Zion, as well as Mayfield Memorial Missionary Baptist, who are two of the leaders in this space in District 1. So look forward to everything coming up in the fall, in the balance of this year and the beginning of 25. Thank you, Mr. Wooten. And with that, Mr. Manager, unless you have anything else to add, do you have anything else to add?
I don't.
Okay, wonderful. Then I am going to turn it over to Ms. James, our Deputy City Attorney. And could you please read the motion that would take us into closed session?
Good evening.
I think that'd be-
Ready?
Go ahead, Ms. James.
Okay. If we could get a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 to preserve the attorney-client privilege in the matter of Ailman versus the City of Charlotte, case number 319 CV 491 in the Western District of North Carolina, and pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 114-318.11A4 to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in Charlotte, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations.
Do you have a motion to go into closed session, and as well as a first and second? All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. We will transition into closed session.
Just trying to get someone to hang with.
I'd like to welcome you to the Charlotte City Council Business Meeting for Monday, October 28th. We will begin with introductions, and I will start with the city clerk.
Good evening. I am Marjorie Molina. I represent District 5.
Good evening, I'm Renee Johnson, and I'm honored to represent District 4.
Marcus Jones, City Manager.
Dante Anderson, Mayor Pro Tem, District 1.
Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Ed Driggs, District 7.
Barb Carter, 6.
Luana Mayfield, council member at large.
Victoria Watlington, council member at large.
Good evening, Lena James, Deputy City Attorney.
Excellent. We begin our meetings with an invocation, an expression, followed by the Pledge of the Allegiance. Our invocation by a particular council member is intended to duly ensure that our proceedings are done well. And we celebrate the religious diversity of the entire community, including those who do not have a religious faith. And this evening, Councilmember Watlington will give us the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. For those who would like to, please bow your heads. Gracious God, as we come before you today to discuss important matters, we ask for your guidance and your wisdom. You are the source of all knowledge and understanding. Therefore, we seek your direction in our decision-making process. Lord, help us to listen attentively to one another with open hearts and minds. In your name, amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we also have some proclamations to celebrate this evening, and I am very excited that we will celebrate the YMCA of Greater Charlotte this evening, and I understand that, yes. I understand that we have some Y leaders here, as well as the CEO and other key members of leadership. And after I read the proclamation, I'd ask that you come down and I can present you with the proclamation. Whereas the YMCA of Greater Charlotte has served as a cornerstone of our community for 150 years, providing invaluable services that promote healthy living, youth development, social responsibility, while strengthening families and fostering community connections. And whereas since its founding in November 11th, 1874, the YMCA of Greater Charlotte has transformed countless lives across our region through its diverse and integrated programs in health and wellness, aquatics, sports, youth camps, child care, educational enrichment, nurturing family stability, servant leadership, upward mobility, and a sense of belonging for all. And whereas the YMCA of Greater Charlotte has consistently demonstrated an unwavering commitment to inclusiveness, serving individuals of all ages, backgrounds, languages, abilities, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to grow in spirit and mind and in body. And whereas through collaboration, tireless efforts, strong partnerships, the YMCA of Greater Charlotte has made a profound impact on the well-being of our community, addressing critical social and health disparities, while also advancing access to literacy, skills development, economic opportunity, volunteerism, civic engagement, community advancement, and philanthropic giving. And whereas the YMCA of Greater Charlotte continues to innovate and adapt to the evolving needs of our community, steadfast in its mission to build a healthier, more connected, and resilient society for future generations, we celebrate and honor the YMCA of Greater Charlotte for its enduring legacy and exceptional contributions to our city. Now, therefore, she, Vi Alexander Lyles, the mayor of Charlotte, does hereby proclaim November 11th, 2024 as YMCA of Greater Charlotte Day, and in Charlotte, and encourages all residents to recognize and celebrate the remarkable impact of the YMCA of Greater Charlotte has had and made in our community, and to participate in the commemoration of the activities planned for this special day as witnessed by the city of Charlotte. I'd love to invite Sue Glass, the CEO, Miss Astrid, we all know Astrid, the Senior Director of Advocacy and Government Relations, the board members, and Crawford Pounds, the board chair, as well as the Y Readers Youth to come down and receive the proclamation. Okay.
Come on, everybody. It's fun to stay at the YMCA.
Thank you for all that you guys do for the community. I think that was my first proclamation with the musical accompaniment.
You're welcome.
Yes, and show choir and everything, so thank you guys so much. Before we proceed, there is another moment in our city that we'd like to celebrate, and we all have these T-shirts, the council members do, on our chairs, but Charlotte FC will host its first ever playoff game this Friday here in the Queen City. It's the first, they lost the first game to Orlando, but now it's going to be a different vibe now that it's in the Queen City. So we really celebrate this momentous occasion for Charlotte FC having their first playoff game this Friday. Please go out and support them and the wonderful work that they've been doing. So wanted to highlight that as well.
If that YMCA blanket is still there when I leave. No, it's not.
Astrid's getting up to get it. There you go.
Okay, I'm just saying, if it's
Thank
still
you.
there, it's going home with me.
Okay, and so we will move now into our public forum for this evening. And on behalf of the entire council, I will ask all the speakers and audience members to be civil and to be courteous with their use of language. The speakers are encouraged to address the council and should refrain from responding to audience members. Likewise, audience members should be very courteous to the speakers as well and not yell out or interrupt the speakers. We want to ensure that everyone has a chance to be heard. We recognize that everyone is taking time out of their day to be here and take part of this process. And so first step, I'm going to have the first speaker come here, and then the next one come over to the other podium, so then we can keep it going in a pretty constant mode. But Miss Alicia Harvey, are you present? Miss Alicia Harvey? Okay. Okay, what about Laith Shahida? Laith Shahida? Okay. Alveri Santana? So very Santana, if you could come down to this podium, and if Robin McEnroth is present, is Robin, Ms. McEnroth? If you could come down to the other podium, that would be great.
I like your blazer.
Yeah, you can go to the top one there, or
We have four.
either one, it's fine. And you will start, and when you start, you'll have 3 minutes. Is it 2 minutes this evening?
If you have over
Right
10
behind
speakers.
you.
We have over
It's
10
easier.
speakers. So when you're ready to start, Ms. Santana, you will have 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I stand before you today because apparently I've been committing crimes that every other small business here is actually guilty of. Crime number 1, not being well connected in the Queen City. While procurement process is theoretically public, one where FOIA requests can be made, we can start seeing the direct connections of those awarding the contracts and those that are actually receiving the contracts. Now, for me, I don't drink alcohol, nor do I play golf, but maybe that's my oversight and what I'm missing. The unofficial business meetings where real decisions are actually being made. Crime number 2, having the audacity to ask questions. When small businesses approach offices meant to support compliance and local resources that are available, we're often met with blank stares or convoluted responses. Asking about basic procurement processes shouldn't feel like discussing molecular biology. Yet here we are, watching support staff struggle with fundamental questions that can make or break a small business. Crime number 3, being the perfect check-the-box diversity partner for large primes. Large prime contractors know our capabilities, often because we've worked with them, for them, or in some capacity. Yet we're repeatedly listed as partners to meet requirements with no genuine intention of meaningful collaboration. Good faith efforts have become a hollow phrase that makes systematic exclusion. And now, clear about something else. These massive balloon scopes of work, they're suffocating small businesses. How can you expect a startup with 1 or 2 employees to build a spaceship? They can get the materials, they can design,
10
but in
seconds.
order to bid, the fact that they have to be involved in the whole process is very unrealistic and is destructive.
Thank you, Ms. Santana. Mr. Rayfield Taylor, are you present? Mr. Rayfield Taylor? You can come down to this podium as Ms. McEnroth begins, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Great. Good evening. My name is Robin McEnroth. I've been a Charlotte resident for just over 2 years. Prior to moving to North Carolina, I worked for 34 years in California for a large nonprofit integrated healthcare delivery system. My last 2 roles were as Vice President of Financial Planning for a $15 billion region and as Chief Operating Officer for a 226-bed hospital. I'm also a foster pet parent, and when I have some spare time, I volunteer at Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, the Humane Society of Charlotte, Providence Meadows Assisted Living, and the Matthews Library. I'm here tonight to ask your support for 2 important initiatives that will improve the lives of the animals and the people who love them in the greater Charlotte area. First, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Animal Care and Control needs a new, updated facility. The facility was built many years ago. It's too small, and it was designed when animals stayed for shorter periods of time and were often euthanized. Today, animals stay much longer at the shelter and hopefully are adopted into forever loving homes. Having satellite shelters would expand the capacity of the existing facility, be designed with life-saving improvements in mind, and also make adoption more accessible to more communities in the greater Charlotte area. Second, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Animal Care and Control is under the police department's budget, and often animal life-saving issues take a second seat to other public safety matters. And that's, as a result, the shelter can't afford to attract and retain the qualified staff they need to effectively run the operation. They also can't count on continuous funding for high-priority life-saving initiatives. They need to be moved out into their own city department, or at the very least, into a department where increased funding can be achieved.
20 seconds.
By supporting satellite facilities and moving CMAC out into its own department, you'd be making life-saving improvements for the animals and people in this community. And we know there's more work to do, but with your support, we can improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jay Walker, are you present? Jay Walker? Ashlyn Osborne, are you present? Valerie Washington, if you could come here, and after Mr. Taylor's presentation, then you will be up next. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'd like to take this time to address the mass disenfranchisement of justice-impacted citizens. I'm a recent returning citizen, just finishing up a 4-year active tenure with incarceration. And some of the problems that I'm experiencing, that we've been experiencing all along, is that when we go to seek these employment opportunities, they don't exist. We get denied because of criminal backgrounds. Now, this is done legally, and it's legally disenfranchising a lot of people, but publicly, a lot of people are saying that there are programs and trainings and stuff like that, they're there, but you can only learn how to write a resume so many times, or whatever the case may be, or before the actual job itself depends on the employer agreeing to offer employment. And that doesn't happen. My suggestion is that, so far we've been taking a passive approach to this, and we've been getting pretty much nowhere. Either we need to create incentivize employers who choose to participate in second chance employment, or we need to make it create mandates that saying, hey, if you're going to do business here in Charlotte and profit from the benefits of doing business, then you got to commit to hiring a certain percentage of impacted citizens from these lower economic communities. That way we can combat the crime issue, we can combat the homeless issue, even the gun violence is also all affected to the upward mobility that's not evident. Now, Rod Shetty just did an update on his report, putting us at number 38 from 50. One of the main reasons why we ranked so low was because once you have a criminal record in Charlotte, it's basically impossible to obtain adequate employment, no matter what they project. And the people that teach these trainings and stuff like that, they're getting money on the back end because for the grant services. But as far as actual employers providing opportunities for employment, that doesn't exist. So we need to take a different approach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Femisha Okoka present? If you could come down to this podium here, Ms. Washington, you will have 2 minutes. Thank
Good
you.
evening, everyone. I'm here because of the housing. I've been filling out applications. They've just been taking the application fee, but when I get there, they don't have any affordable housing, and then that just leaves me out. When I get there, it's like $1,000 and some odd dollars. I get $1,200 a month. Come on, please. And the apartment complex I live in, they go up every year, $100. I've been there 6 years. They have not been in there to fix anything. I need help getting a place to live because I'm about to be out there. They're charging me $975 a month on a month-to-month basis. I went down to sign the new lease. They weren't in the office. The second time, she said she don't speak English. The third time I went down, she said they were on lunch, so I would need to come back. I just had surgery. I can't go up and down that hill. I don't have a car. So I need some help and what I need to do to take care of this because I can't afford that. And all the houses that's supposed to be based on your income, there are none of those. So what am I supposed to do? I mean, I worked my whole life, but yet and still, I'm not seeing any results from trying to get somewhere decent to live. I mean, I've started seeing roaches in my apartment, and it's just unbelievable. I got to buy 4 cans of Raid every month out of my disability check. So I just need some help. Can anybody help me? This is like coming down here asking for help and not getting any because there are none out there. There are no apartments for people, that can't afford these luxury apartments at $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. Are you kidding me? Really? So, I'm here because I need a change. I need the city to help me do what I need to do so I can live in peace and not be cluttered up with the next-door neighbors with their visitors coming to my house because I didn't have them in the beginning. So, thank you.
Ms. Washington. And Ms. Washington, if you could connect with Mr. Sean Heath, and you can walk up to the back and he'll meet you,
Well, he's
or
going to
right
call.
there, either one, but he will follow up with you on next steps. I thank you and appreciate you for coming out. Is Miss Sunday Patterson, are you present? Sunday Patterson? Priscilla Hoy? Priscilla? If you could come to this podium, and after Ms. Coca is completed, you'll be up next. Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I want to say thank you to the esteemed body. My name is Pastor Felicia, and I'm a resident of a local church here called Christ Embassy Church in Charlotte. And we represent a non-denominational global ministry with a vision to take God's presence to the nations and peoples of the world. We believe wholeheartedly in the transformative power of God's love and His word to transform lives, give hope and faith, and bring healing to men physically, emotionally, but most importantly, spiritually. We've come here today to appreciate this esteemed body for its work in advancing the economic prosperity and progress of the city of Charlotte. We have seen and observed your stellar commitment to fostering growth, creating safe neighborhoods, and ensuring that Charlotte remains a place where families, students, and businesses alike can thrive. I remember my first entry into this city. We came into the downtown area in July of 2009, and it was the first city I ever came to and said, wow, I actually want to come downtown, which I have also learned is now called uptown. Praise the Lord.
That's right.
So I want to say we know that leading a city is not an easy task, and we are sincerely appreciate your willingness to meet all of the challenges head on and dedication to finding solutions that benefit the community. Your commitment has led to significant economic progress across our region, contributing to North Carolina being listed as the #2 best state to start business in 2024. That was from July's CNBC in regards to the state of North Carolina. But with Charlotte being the second largest city in the state, that also too would be a manifestation of your efforts to the economic progress of the city.
20 seconds.
Praise the Lord. We'd like to let you know, this honored body, that we are continually praying for you as leaders, for your continued health, progress, and prosperity. We pray for your wisdom, your guidance, direction for each of you as you lead the city. We're encouraged in the scriptures in 1 Timothy chapter 2:1-4 to pray for all leaders, especially political representatives. And we have a gift here.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry.
That we'd like
I
to
have
present
cut
to you all.
I'm sorry.
How do we do it?
You can come over to the city clerk area, and the officer will help you with the gifts that you're giving to us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your attention.
If you have any of your comments in writing that you'd like to share,
Sure.
you could share with the clerk as well. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you for the attention.
Miss London, if you could come down to this podium here, and we'll give you just a second, Miss Hoyle. Let these people get past you. Thank you. All right, Miss Hoyle, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Hoyo. I've been working at Charlotte Douglas International Airport as a lead cabin cleaner for a year. I work for a company called ABM. We clean American airline planes, and we ensure that flights are clean and safe for passengers. My job is essential, so I must speak up about the harsh conditions and low pay we are facing. We cabin cleaners have to clean and secure hundreds of airplanes, seats in a short amount of time, rushing to complete our work in hot planes with no AC. The closest drinking water is often a long walk across the tarmac. We are told by ABM management that we cannot accept water offered to us by flight attendants. The rapid pace of work dehydrates us. Some of us have passed out during work from stress. I myself have drunken water opened by passengers left on the planes, and it was inhumane and disgusting for me. We endure all of this for low pay. I myself are currently battling eviction, and I am a mother. This is my family. Imagine looking into the face of your own children and telling that they or she might have to leave their home, even though mommy works full-time, and it's not enough to keep a place over their head. A month ago, along with fellow workers, At Prospect Airport Services, we deliver petitions to our management demanding better access to water and more respect. Hundreds of us have signed petitions, including myself. Thank you, council members Brown, Johnson, Mayfield, and Ashmere for your support, but I'm sad to say that almost nothing has changed.
10 seconds.
Charlotte says that it is building an airport fit for a queen. So why do we, the workers, we're helping to make this vision reality and struggle simply to survive?
Thank you, Ms. Hoyle. Thank you, Ms. Hoyle. Mr. Robinson, if you could come down, and right after Ms. London has her 2 minutes, she'll be up next. Thank you, Ms. London. Good to see you.
Good to see you all. Good evening. I'm Anna London, President and CEO of Charlotte Works, and many of you know me, and you know that I care deeply about workforce development and the cross-sector supports that make our workforce successful. I never read talking points, but I'm reading talking points tonight because of the 2 minute. So I'd like to share why supporting CareRing is a critical investment in the strength and sustainability of our community. As we know, a thriving community relies on a healthy workforce, and CareRing's efforts address this need at its root. CareRing has been a beacon of hope for individuals facing barriers to health care, especially those who are uninsured or underinsured. By providing essential medical care and support, they not only help individuals achieve better health outcomes, but also enable them to participate more fully in the workforce. Imagine a worker struggling with a chronic condition without access to affordable health care. Productivity declines, days of work are missed, and the spiral continues. CareRing intervenes to prevent that by offering the medical care needed to keep individuals healthy and engaged in the workforce. Programs like the Physicians Reach Out initiative connect people with comprehensive health care services, allowing them to focus on job training, skill development, and career advancement without the looming worry of medical debt or untreated illnesses. The result is a healthier, more capable workforce that drives our local economy forward. In conclusion, CareRing is not just meeting immediate health care needs of our community, it's laying the foundation for a healthier, more productive workforce, ensuring that every individual has the opportunity to contribute to our economy and our future. Supporting CareRing means investing in the well-being of our neighbors and is a strategic investment in building a stronger, more resilient workforce. I want to leave you with just a couple of points. The cycle of disadvantage. Many jobs require pre-employment physicals, and this creates a cycle where lack of health care access hinders employment opportunities, and unemployment, in turn, limits access to affordable health care. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. London. And if you have your comments in writing, you can certainly hand them to the clerk, and she can share with us.
Stay right on there with me.
Mr. Robinson, you have 2 minutes.
My name is Kenny Robinson. I am the founder and president. Matter of fact, my name is Dr. Kenny Robinson now. And I am the founder and president of Freedom Fighting Missionaries. And I am here on behalf of CareRing, who is our primary healthcare facility for those that we serve, justice-involved individuals and their families, specifically those who are in pregnancy while dealing with incarceration. They are one of the only healthcare agencies in Charlotte, North Carolina that allow their doctors, physicians, and nurses to go inside the detention center and provide quality care to our residents there. They provide services to our organization and those that we serve. In the past year, we have sent 3 formerly homeless mothers who were in their late-term pregnancy to CareRing. They are now providing 2 years' worth of services to that family and their children. The rest of the community have stepped up in support of CareRing, including the county, the private sector, the Charlotte Hornets. Shenavia Montgomery, who's the executive director there, has raised millions of dollars to support their new building, and we are just asking for the city to step in and contribute their part to this initiative. Again, CareRing has been very supportive of those that we serve, including myself. When I go in there to pay my bills and my invoices, the doctor there says, Kenny, can you take a seat? Let me check your blood pressure. Let me check your blood sugar. Let me make sure that you're all right as you are out here serving the community. So I am normally here to speak on behalf of our organization, but it is also important as a community leader to support other organizations in their initiatives.
20
So
seconds.
I am here to just do that in support of caring and those that they serve, low-income and no-income families throughout the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Thank you, and thank you all for coming out. That concludes our public forum. We appreciate you all coming out and voicing your perspective. We will now transition to the public hearing forum of tonight's agenda, and we will begin with agenda item number 8, the public hearing and decision on courtyards at Back Creek Properties area voluntary annexation. We're going to open the public hearing on courtyards at Back Creek Properties area voluntary annexation. And Madam Clerk, are there any speakers?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Second.
All right, there's no speakers. We have a motion to close. Do I have a motion? Is there a motion to close public hearing and adopt the annexation of the ordinance?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to close and adopt. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, public hearing and decision on Russell Grove area voluntary annexation. We're going to open the public hearing on Russell Grove area voluntary annexation. Madam Clerk, are there speakers?
We have 2.
We have 2 speakers for agenda item number 9. Mr. Cullen Brown, would you like to speak this evening? Okay, and Mr. Rory would not like to speak. And so, because they do not wish to speak, is there a motion
Move to close and adopt.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That's unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item number 10, the public hearing and decision on transit technology project grant application. We're going to open up the public hearing, and Madam Clerk, are there any speakers?
No, ma'am.
Hearing none, is there a motion to close public hearing and adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager or his designee to apply for 7 grants in the amount of $4,234,574 with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for transit technology projects, and authorize city manager or his designee to accept up to 7 grants in the amount of $4,200,034,574 in North Carolina Department Transportation for transit technology projects.
To approve A, B, and C.
Second.
The motion to approve A, B, and C, as well as close public hearing. We will move on to agenda item number 11, which is the city manager's report, and I'll hand it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I've put out in front of you the 30-day memo, which will include at the next business meeting, the federal and state legislative agendas update. There'll be more discussion as it relates to the Budget and Intergovernmental Relations Committee, as well as your 2025 calendar. The clerk will provide you with that calendar. I would like to get some feedback from the council members before we present that, what worked this past year, what may not have worked. And during my next several city manager updates, what I do want to do is, you've asked me a number of questions around public safety. So I want to make sure that as we start to prepare ourselves for the annual strategy meeting, hopefully late January, that some of the items that we have been utilizing as it relates to this holistic approach to public safety, that we start to bring staff in to prime it, if you will. For instance, the quality of life team, when we talked about illegal tractor trailer parking and some of the things that are happening there, as well as the Safe Charlotte report. I know it's been a few years since We took this multi-committee approach to make it more than just policing. And sometimes we fail to fall back into the conversation we had before the pandemic, which was violence as a public health crisis. And we have a framework that both the city and the county has adopted. So as we start to prepare ourselves for the annual strategy meeting, I would like to have staff come in during my time during these meetings to give council updates, as there have been a number of questions around safety in the city. That's my report.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, it will also be helpful when you give the report based off the conversation that was shared with us tonight from Ms. Santana regarding the procurement reform. It may be in our best interest if we look at a third party to come in and assist with our CBI, because this is not the first time that we've heard. I have mentioned it from the dais where council will approve a number of companies through our partnership, yet there's no actual follow-up to ensure that those companies are being utilized by the primes. So this might be an opportunity for us when we are identifying that this is a priority and a goal from the council, yet it is not necessarily being implemented. And also, when we look at the numbers, even with what we approved earlier today, we're now open to 100 counties. There's a message that's out there that we need to figure out what it is regarding why we're not receiving multiple bids for any project that we send out. So there is something that is happening, and we might be at the point where we need a third party to come in and assist us. We're actually talking to these vendors in order to figure out how we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would also like to ask about the trip to Germany being on the calendar. I noticed the National League of Cities is listed. If we're not meeting on the week that we're gone, that information should be publicized as well, so as far as on here. So I wanted to know if that could be added, or if we could at least acknowledge that that it's on the calendar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any additional comments for the city manager? Okay. Thank you, city manager. We will move on to the business portion of our agenda. And for agenda item number 12, is there a motion to authorize the city manager or his designee to accept a grant in the amount of $250,000 from the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Comcast for the city's UN Tech CLT initiative, and adopt the budget ordinance appropriating $250,000 from the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Comcast to the Neighborhood Development Grant Fund?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That's unanimous. For agenda item number 13, the renewable natural gas sale, is there a motion to adopt a resolution approving the sale of unconditioned biogas recovered from the wastewater treatment process at Piedmont Natural Gas, and authorize the city manager or designee to negotiate and execute all documents necessary to complete the sale?
Move to approve A and B.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That's unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item number 14, the Hornets property transaction. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the ground lease of 1.907 acres of real property identified as parcel identification number 080-053-84 to Charlotte PEC LLC, the conveyance of an option to ground lease said 1.907 acres of real property to the lender of Charlotte PEC LLC, and the conveyance of an option to purchase 1.3 1.12 acres of real property identified as parcel identification number 080-053-01 to Charlotte PEC LLC, and authorize the manager or his designee to negotiate and execute any and all documents necessary for the conveyances authorized by the resolution in the conformity therewith, and adopt a budget ordinance to appropriate $15 million in fund balance in the Tourism Operating Fund for transfer to an appropriation in the Tourism Capital Projects Fund.
Motion to adopt A, B, and C.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any conversation? Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you. So I have a couple of comments regarding this morning's property transaction. I would not be supporting this tonight. I have a challenge with the fact that we're doing a 99-year lease. That's $10 a year. Yet, at the same time, we're paying for access to the parking for our employees to have access from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. at $150,000 annually for the maintenance. For these 125 parking spaces. So one of many challenges, the $15 million, when we started a conversation about 30, what the impact and the ownership for the city and for the residents is. Looking at 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. when we have workers that work part-time at the facility, as well as immediately around the facility, all of the businesses. We're paying for that parking. We're giving them access to land for next to nothing, just to be able to say that we have this 99-year lease. I have a number of concerns regarding the structure of this entire deal and how it really sets up the city of Charlotte to be successful long-term versus this private business and the subsidies we've contributed. But I'm more concerned with the fact that the city council approved a budget earlier this year that increased the parking times for paid parking from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. You have to move your vehicle, so even if you do park, and if you're going to work, or even if you're going out, when we want people to come into Uptown, you get that 2-hour limit and that's it. And then you actually have to get in your vehicle and physically move it to another location because you can't even extend it based on the new Park Mobile system that we're using or the updates that they made. Now we're looking at yet more parking. One of the reasons I have this challenge is because many years ago, when we had discussions regarding any development in Uptown, there was a commitment of free parking or accessible parking in Uptown area. And over the last 5-6 years, we have all but rolled all of that back, where people cannot accessibly access our Uptown area. Whether you are going Uptown for an event or if you're having to go Uptown to work, if you're paying $20+ for parking, but you're earning only $15 an hour, at some point, people are going to realize that it's cheaper for them to stay home or find a job that doesn't consist of them having to be Uptown, and we're going to see the impact of that. So even though I know it will be great support, I am not going to be supporting this.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Any additional comment? Hearing none. Oh, Ms. Johnson.
Councilmember Mayfield is right about the parking. Parking uptown is very expensive and it's not accessible to everyone. I would like some details about this. This seems like if we could get more information about this transaction. I think it would be great if you could give us some information about the transaction.
Ms. Dodson is coming to the podium.
And perhaps, I don't know if that's something that can be negotiated, or can we defer this and bring this back?
So let me explain really quickly. When we were here in March, we talked about the lease of the property for the practice facility. Currently, and that was part of the lease extension with the Hornets to 2045. But as we pivoted and started to look at what we call the gravel lot, we now today have our city employees that park there. And so as a part of this discussion, it became very important that we protect that parking, and those employees that park there today can still continue to park there tomorrow and into the future, that we were protecting that as a place for our employees to park. So our payment for the maintenance and the operating of the deck is to protect those spaces for our employees parking, and that was why the daytime hours were important. The other thing I will mention to Councilmember Mayfield's point, which is we spent a lot of time with general services talking about when do our employees come into spaces, leave spaces, what happens if we go past 5:30. We don't want employees to be dinged because they leave late. And we currently have a great relationship with the Hornets in our own parking deck here across Davidson Street, and we'll continue to do that for anybody who might stay late on a night like tonight and be parking over in that facility in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
So, for clarification, thank you for that, Ms. Dodson. When there is an event uptown, there are individuals for our parking off of Davidson, because you can only access that, the public parking from the Davidson, from the, what is that, College Street? On the back side of Davidson, not on the Davidson side that we would use. Caldwell, thank you. You can only access it from Caldwell. There are people that are standing out there charging people to come in. So you have people that are going to events that are paying to get into the space. It is a limited number of spaces on that first level that you have access to. So I also want us to take into consideration that we have employees that unfortunately work 2+ jobs. Some of those employees also work in the immediate uptown area. So they rely on that parking. So the idea that they can move from the gravel to the parking deck that we have that covers between Caldwell and Davidson isn't necessarily always the case, because we have vendors that we partner with that are standing out there charging people to come in and park in there, because that is open parking for whoever our partner is that's standing there charging, and they have access. So for the people who are employees that have a badge, depending on what time they might have to be to work at the arena or any of the businesses that's immediately down there, they might be able to get in, but they also might not, because it is a very limited number of spaces. It's not like they have the access, nor will we necessarily want them to, because it is employee parking coming from this side. So you want to have a barrier for protection. Yet, I just want us to be transparent in the fact that that parking is also public parking where individuals are charging people to park in that parking deck.
City Manager.
So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So Council Member Mayfield, and I'll try to put this in the right context. It's a lot broader than just the PEC, because you've been having this conversation with me, from red bags over meters to how expensive it is to park. I wish Debbie were here, Debbie Smith. She's not, but we have began a conversation with a number of the folks who have authority over some of these spaces to see if we can do something better for employees in general who are in the, let's say, the tourism and hospitality industry. So what I'll do is add to the list of coming back to council with some of the things we're doing around the parking, because I know it's not directed simply at this. It's been a 5-year conversation, and so I appreciate what you're putting on the table today.
So, Manager, I would say for tonight, the fact that we have language in here with a window of 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. is where I have a challenge. We either need to extend that time for it to actually be accessible, because again, a lot of our employees also work at this venue.
I think we have some flexibility
Yeah.
in this.
We do, and just to be clear, we don't have, I don't think, we work closely with General Services, but I don't think we tracked exactly which employees are parking in the gravel lot today. Should they work in the arena as well, or something like, we haven't tracked it that far. But what we did work through in working with the Hornets is that partnership again. Most of those employees are working in this building, or in Old City Hall, or in police headquarters that are parking in the gravel lot now. And do the time, can we have some flexibility with those employees that are parking beyond those times? And there's a willingness on their part to do that.
Or if we can be flexible on what they're charging for parking, because charging $50, $75, because again, it's not just the city of Charlotte employees I'm thinking about our employees that are uptown. Are we even tracking, not just the Spectrum employees? We have employees through Show Pros, we have employees through other partners that are up there. I'm concerned that if our city continues to become unaffordable, we are going to see a mass exodus of our employees and our workforce because it is not financially feasible for them to go to work at a job that's paying them $15 an hour.
Understood.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Ms. Molina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So, Mr. Manager, this may be a question for you or Ms. Dotson. With approving this tonight, is there a way to consider what Ms. Mayfield is saying? Like, would we need a motion of some type to maybe consider what she's saying as a malleable item? Because if we pass it, does that mean that we can't revisit it, or do we have to? I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand, you know, considering what she's asking, is that something that we could consider in some way? Because I don't know if it warrants us coming back to the item, you know. I don't know. I'm open to what, you know, the council decides, but I don't know if it warrants us actually having to, let's say, extend this as a decision. I think what she's interested in is, you know, could we continue the conversation around parking, if is that something that we can do, or?
Well, I hope what Councilmember Mayfield is doing is bringing to our attention a bigger issue. And how can we go about addressing a bigger issue as opposed to holding up this item? And we have already begun a discussion about the bigger issue, and we just need to have that discussion with council to see if it's addressing some of the issues around definitely folks that are in, at a minimum, the hospitality industry and the cost of parking.
So, Ms. Mayfield, are you amenable to that, considering what's being said today? I mean, I understand, I think we all understand the greater picture of what you're saying, but, you know, and I think, you know, understanding, you know, the community members that we represent that work in these areas, your desire to create space for them, but are you amenable to that? Is that something that?
Mr. Manager, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
And for clarification, it might be a question for the city, the Assistant Deputy City Attorney as well. If I were to ask for an amendment to the motion for us to remove this line for the parking, that right now we're saying Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., to give time for negotiations. They don't get to come back at a shorter time than 5 p.m., but to give us the opportunity to continue to move forward with the conversation. But if we remove that out for right now, because the other parts ain't gonna fight. But I'm concerned about the impact of this parking. But if that's a hard line, of which there's enough people around the dais to move forward with it. You only need 6. I could be my no regardless. Yet, for me, that is a line that I'm going to draw in the sand for this, because I didn't draw it earlier when it could have helped a lot more people.
And the reason why I ask, I mean, it's very clear that we're going to pass it, right? But I just want to be amenable to what you're saying and, you know, understanding that it's being explained that that's something that we're going to continue in conversation, you know, even though it will be passed, in my opinion. We don't need to adopt language for that or anything, right?
So here's what I would tell you, and I'm going to channel the manager for a second. what this vote is on tonight is the lease transactions for the land and the transactions for the land. As I mentioned before, we spent a lot of time talking about the parking hours. We worked with General Services, understanding that, again, the 125 spaces as it relates to our employees. But I think that the point that Councilmember Mayfield is bringing up is a great one, and I would ask the broader question that I think the manager was asking is, how can we be impactful as we think about this across uptown? And while I would say specific to the site and the 125 spaces for our employees, the Hornets have given a willingness to work with us, right? We acknowledge that, hey, we have council nights, and I don't want to have a city employee that has to move their car from one spot to another because they're here working late. And there is a willingness to work with us on those spaces. I think that's something that we have to work through in time. But I also do think, Councilmember Mayfield, to your point about affordability, is a broader subject that we should start to tackle and think about as it relates to parking and other costs in working in an urban environment.
So right now, we're stuck with the language that's in front of us that has in here, the city shall retain right to use 125 parking spaces in the parking structure Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m.
That is the language that we had agreed to. But again, there was a willingness on the Hornets side to work with us on that language. But again, we just don't know what we're dealing with of how many employees of the 125 until those spaces are built and we're ready to move into those spaces. So we all acknowledge that these are the typical business hours that the employees that park there today are using on that, and that was what we were focused on protecting. I'm happy to continue to work with them to accommodate our employees, because that's what this was all about, was accommodating the spaces that we have for employees today, but also into the future. And if that means that some of our employees are working multiple jobs and need to park longer, we're happy to work through that with them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dotson. We have a question for Mr. Graham, and then I think we'll be ready to vote.
No, not a question, just a comment, and I think that, one, I hope that the council will move forward tonight as submitted to move this project forward. And then secondly, I think the city manager said maybe once or twice that he's willing to come back with a different conversation that talks about parking throughout uptown, relating to those who work in the hospitality and tourism industry that come to service not only Spectrum Center, but Bank of America Stadium, the Blumenthal, iShirts, and those type of things, making sure that there's an affordable option, if any, for them to take advantage of. So I think we've already kind of met in the middle, and it allows this project to move forward uninterrupted. And we look forward to getting the manager's report on a broader issue that impacts H&T.
All right, Ms. Johnson, you have the final comment.
Okay, thank you. And I understand there is a broader issue, but this issue is important as well, right? And when we talk about it's a broad issue, we can tackle that one agenda item at a time. So is there a hurry to get this approved tonight, or is this, can you get those questions answered and get the details and bring that back, this back?
So what I would say is this is one of the last steps for the Hornets to be able to move on the lease of the 60% of the gravel lot so that they can start on the practice facility. If you remember, the vote on the actual piece of the deal happened on March 25th. They've since gone through a rezoning. We've gone through creation of these documents. They're ready to move. They've released drawings. They're ready to go in for permitting. So these are things that need to happen in order for them to move forward. But again, I want to reiterate, because the Hornets have been great on this one particular topic of the parking and employee parking, and we have shared a partnership across the street in the existing deck for quite a while. So I'm willing to continue to work with them, but I don't necessarily see that as a reason to hold up this vote tonight.
Well, as far as parking, we could give our employees a parking pass, and that would take care of after hours. I mean, that seems like a solution, but I think there's an opportunity for an amendment. I would support it if you want to make that, Councilmember Mayfield, but.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I think that
Okay.
we've had a robust conversation around this particular topic, and we've had recognition from the city manager and some agreement from Ms. Mayfield, who raised the issues that there's a cost issue, a broader cost issue for working Charlotteans. And B, we want to make sure that parking is accessible in the uptown area, so we're not doing something that hurts our economic ecosystem overall. But we have the opportunity to work on that even as we potentially pass this tonight. That doesn't preclude us from addressing the issues that were raised by Ms. Mayfield and others. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adopt, authorize, and adopt agenda item number 14. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Did you say yes?
Was that a?
Did she say no?
Oh, okay.
Don't
All
take
right.
long to count.
All opposed, raise your hands. Okay, Ms. Johnson and Ms. Mayfield were opposed, and it passed. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 15, the Ramsey Creek Park Shuttle Bus Service Interlocal Agreement. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution ratifying the interlocal agreement with Mecklenburg County to provide shuttle service to the public swimming beach at Ramsey Creek and authorize the city manager to renew the agreement for up to four one-year terms and to amend the agreement consistent with the purpose for which the agreement was approved?
Move to approve A and B.
Second.
There's a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That's unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item 16, W.T. Harris Boulevard and Sugar Creek Road intersection project municipal agreement. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing city manager to execute the municipal agreement from North Carolina Department of Transportation to accept Surface Transportation Block Grant Program direct attributable funds in the amount of $1,338,000 for the W.T. Harris Boulevard and Sugar Creek Road intersection project and adopt a budget ordinance appropriating $1.338 million from North Carolina Department of Transportation for the construction to the General Capital Projects Fund.
Yes. You asked if there was a motion. The answer is yes.
All right, I have a motion. Thank you, Mr. Driggs. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I wanted to know if we could get just a little information about this. This borders District 2 and District 4. So if you could give us a little information about this?
We have a staff member coming down to address the question.
16 and 17.
Good evening, Council. Debbie Smith, Department of Transportation. Good to see you tonight. And so, yes, this is at the intersection of W.T. Harris and Sugar Creek Road. And this would install right turn lanes right at that intersection. So it is right on the border.
Okay.
Of the two council districts.
So it's not both sides of Sugar Creek, it's just the one side of?
It is, it would be providing those exclusive right turn lanes along northbound and southbound on Sugar Creek Road.
So, okay. So northbound and southbound is 2 and 4, right, Mr. Graham? I think it is, yeah. Okay, all right, I just want, okay. All right, thank you, that's all. I just wanted some information. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise hands. Any opposed? That's unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item number 17, West Rocky River Road Shared Use Path Project Municipal Agreement. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing city manager to execute a municipal agreement with North Carolina Department of Transportation to accept Surface Transportation Block Grant direct attributable funds in the amount of $1.976 million for the West Rocky River Road Shared Use Path project and adopt a budget ordinance appropriating the same amount from North Carolina Department of Transportation in the General Capital Projects Fund.
Move to adopt the resolution and to
Second.
adopt the ordinance.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any comments? Ms. Johnson?
Yes, can I get some more information about this improvement in District 4, please? Somebody, yeah, come tell me about it.
Good evening, Ms. Johnson. Debbie Smith, Charlotte Department of Transportation. Happy to be up here. So what can I answer for you?
Just give a little detail about the project.
Sure, be happy to. So this project is located on Rocky River Road, and it goes for about 0.8 miles, and it is going to install a shared use path, which means it's a wider sidewalk, which allows use for pedestrians and bicyclists. And that's going to also include driveway modifications, curb ramps, enhancements to the street lighting, and we're going to upgrade the curb and gutter and some of the storm drainage systems along that.
So that's driveway modifications to the residents?
Correct.
Along that way? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item number 18, the supplemental municipal agreement for the Hornets Nest Park Access Improvements Project. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing city manager to negotiate and execute a municipal agreement with North Carolina Department of Transportation to accept surface transportation block grant funds in the amount of $1.030 million for the Hornets Nest Park Access Improvement Project and adopt a budget ordinance appropriating the same amount from the North Carolina Department of Transportation to the General Capital Projects Fund.
Move to approve A and B.
Second.
There's a motion to approve A and B. Any discussion? I will say before we vote that I think that the Hornets Nest Park has always been a wonderful part of the city, and it is due for some improvement. And so I believe all of the park's users, I use the parks sometimes to play tennis over there. So I use the park, and I know that the community would definitely appreciate the improvement here. So unless I see any additional comment, Mr. Graham.
See you in the court tomorrow morning.
Oh, I said the T word.
Boy, you said the magic word.
7:30 tomorrow morning.
I'm not as advanced as you, Mr. Graham. I'm not as advanced as you. Okay, we have a motion and a second for agenda item 18. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item 19, the Metropolitan Planning Program Grant Municipal Agreement. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution for the city manager to negotiate and execute a municipal agreement from NCDOT to support transit planning activities for the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization and adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute interlocal agreements with Iredell County Area Transportation System and Union County Transportation System to support transit planning activity for the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization and adopt a resolution or authorizing the city manager or designee to execute the interlocal agreement with Centralina Regional Council and Union County to support transportation planning projects. Is there a motion and a second?
To approve A, B, and C.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comment? Hearing none, all in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. We will now move to the appointment section of our agenda this evening. And tonight, Charlotte City Council will make appointments to the Alternative Compliance Review Board. The council members voted by ballot and submitted their ballots to the city clerk earlier during the action review. Any nominees receiving 6 or more votes will automatically be appointed. If no nominee receives 6 at least 6 votes, a runoff will be necessary, and council will be asked to vote tonight to determine the highest vote getter. That person will be appointed to the board. All appointments will be recorded in the official minutes of this meeting, and the clerk will now proceed with the announcement of the results. Madam Clerk?
For the Alternative Compliance Review Board, Justin Stringfellow has been appointed.
Okay. Excellent. So he is automatically appointed. No need to vote. And with that, we come to the conclusion of our agenda.
Move to close the agenda.
There is a motion to close and adjourn the meeting, and a second. All in favor, please go home. Have a wonderful evening.
Don't forget your t-shirt.